Welcome into ESPN FC Live. It is great to have you with us. The Champions League is back. We are very happy. We're warming you up for that. We're also going to be talking about Bayern Munich, Bayern or bust. Is there a title challenger in Bayer Leverkusen? And if it isn't them, who is it to challenge this year? And when it comes to PL Express as well, one of the big topics right now is Manchester United. As you can see, Rob Dawson is with us. He's come very prepared. He's actually in Germany at the Allianz Arena ahead of Bayern's meeting with Manchester United. So we'll get more from him in just a moment on that. Janusz Michallik with me, Kay Murray, as always. Let's start with the Champions League then. We're going to go bigger picture. We're going to talk about the front runners in this one. Manchester City, the favourites to defend the title this season. Behind them, you're then looking at the likes of Bayern, Real Madrid, Arsenal, Barca, PSG. What are your thoughts, Janusz, on who's going to win it this season?
Well, for me, obviously, Manchester City are the favorites to repeat that. I don't think much has changed. As always, Pep Guardiola, Manchester City improved, just as you think that they lose some key players. They're able to retain some that are very important. And before we even, talk about how impressed we've been with Jeremy Doku and maybe some of the players missing, I think some of the keys to Manchester City is the fact that leaders like Kyle Walker and Bernardo Silva are staying. That, to me, is the most important thing because of the experience, obviously quality, but the hunger, because we talk about hunger of Manchester City. Are they going to maintain it, right? Pep Guardiola is the sort that that he's going to maintain his intensity in terms of motivation. But I think Kyle Walker, as we all know, is that type of leader as well. And Bernardo Silva is too, maybe a little bit quieter, but key. So for me, given the group that they have, given the great start to the Premier League they have right now, I think they're just going to maintain a certain level until, comes February when, De Bruyne and key players are ready and healthy, and they'll have plenty of time to rotate and make sure that they don't have to rush some of these players. I really don't see anybody at this moment that is going to challenge them.
But let's focus on if there was to be a bit of a surprise, Rob, if we can. Is there a team that you would pick out to have a bit of a surprise from this season?
As daft as it's going to sound, I do think that if the cards fall right for Man United, they have an opportunity to go quite deep in the tournament. They've got players in Casemiro and Rafael Varane who have won it before. They have experience, maybe not experience with United in those big games, but experience in those big Champions League games. United were inconsistent last season, but did show that on their day they could beat anyone at home. They beat they won a two-legged tie in the Europa League against Barcelona. They beat City at home. They beat Liverpool. They beat Arsenal. They beat Tottenham. I'm not suggesting that they're nailed on to get to a semi-final or a final. The point is that Man United still, I think, could beat anyone on their day, and that is very dangerous in the Champions League. Sometimes we've seen in Champions League campaigns that the best team doesn't always win it. It's the team that can find a way to get through these big ties, and United certainly have the players to do it. Obviously, it's very easy for me to sit here and say that they can do it. It's a different matter altogether than actually doing it. But sat here right now, if they can get through that group, certainly, obviously a tough group with Bayern Munich in it, but if they can get through that, there won't be a team in Europe who would want to draw Man United. There'll be managers across Europe in the knockout round thinking, I'd rather avoid Man United. Man United have the capability to get these big results. So, obviously, again, very easy for me to sit here and say it. United would have to go and do it, but they certainly have the capability to surprise a few people in the tournament this year.
You are a brave man to come.
I think some Manchester United bigwigs have just walked into the room that he's in, and so he's just saying what they want to hear. Are you really that much against it, though, Janusz?
I mean, look, they'll get better than what we see. It's a toxic environment for so many reasons that we often talk about here. Be it Premier League Express. I'm sure we're going to get to that later. But look, I mean, the toxic environment right now, some of the injuries, the ownership issues, I just don't see how. I mean, look, I'm never going to say that it's impossible because it is Manchester United. But, if I were asked that question, I'd probably put Real Madrid, Bayern Munich ahead of them because I truly think that, of course, they're going to challenge Manchester City. They have their own issues, I suppose, but they're easier to solve than Manchester United, even when they're healthy, I think. And if I had to throw an outsider, it would be an Arsenal team before I even threw Manchester United. So that's why I think you're a brave man. And, if this comes good, Rob, my goodness, you are the man.
They'll get battered by Bayern tomorrow, and I'm going to look like an absolute fool. So
you'll be the one to blame.
I will be.
You'll be the one to blame, Rob. Listen, it is the Champions League. It's back today, and there's so many star players to be looking out for, and some young starlets as well. For Barcelona this season, everybody's getting excited about 16-year-old Lamine Yamal, and for good reason too. Here's our FC team talking about Barca's youngster.
Steve Nicol, Sebastian Salazar here in the ESPN FC studios. Joining us for this segment, we've got both Ian Darke and Stuart Robson, and lots to discuss. Lamine Yamal, guys, 16-year-old that has burst onto the scene for both Barcelona and Spain. Ale, we know this player's special. What specifically makes him special to you?
Fearless, but with a smile on his face. Enjoying the moment, understanding the magnitude of the moment, and yet being able to execute under pressure. The reason he's playing for both Barcelona and Spain is because he has got an opportunity and he's running away with it. See, Rafinha gets himself thrown out of the game in the first match in La Liga, and now Lamine Yamal gets a chance. And let me tell you, every time he touches the ball, something good happens, something productive happens. And he has been, when he has been on the field, he has been Barcelona's best player and most consistent player. Again, we're talking about a 16-year-old. That's what's special, is that the moment may be big to others and may be big to most, but not to him. And then there's a quality with that left foot. There's a touch. There is a willingness to run at people, the vision to see where the pass needs to be, and the ability to then be able to deliver that pass with the right pace. We have seen him playing the ball to the back post in multiple occasions, being able to find players. There's a lot to like about Lamine Yamal. And on top of that, he added a goal for Spain. So there you go. Productivity, individual productivity, part of a group, knows what his role is, and he's doing it very well.
It's not just Stevie that is 16, it's that he's doing it at such a big club like Barcelona.
Yeah, the thing that impresses me about him is that final pass. You know, when you hear us talking about, well, somebody will get better with experience, you know, we're talking about, when we say experience, we're talking about a player, regardless of your position, being in a situation and having to make a decision. And we talk about experience on the level of, well, once you've been in that position 2 or 3 times, now you know what decision to make. This guy just doesn't make bad decisions. It's 16. At the level that you're talking about, it's just incredible. For him to be picking passes out in the penalty box, picking out forwards, picking out the goal, you know, just picking out passes, and as Ali said, the weight of the pass as well. So if this guy stays fit, if this guy doesn't have any injury problems, there is no reason why he can't be, at one stage, or at some stage, not but maybe one of the best players you've ever seen.
We've seen a lot of guys come out of Barcelona or join the club at a young age with lots of talent. Pedri, Gavi, Ansu Fati. Rabo, you know, when we think of those players, where does Lamine Yamal fit in? Is he better than all those?
Well, he's right up there, absolutely. You know, 16, Gavi was coming into the team and playing well. Pedri likewise. But he's shown in the games that he's played so far, and Stevie mentioned it there, Ali's mentioned it as well, the decision-making. A lot of youngsters come into the team and they run around and they show great enthusiasm and they show good quality at times. But it's the calmness under pressure, finding that right pass, making the right decisions time and time again, having that good game understanding. Again, game understanding usually comes with experience, but he's showing great game understanding at the moment. So, as Stevie just said, he could be a top player at the moment, and he could be Barcelona's best of the young players that have come through.
Ian, he's only 16. Are we getting carried away?
Well, remember, he got in the team late last season when he was 15. Yeah, I mean, there's always the danger you're going to get carried away. But you look at some players and you can tell they're going to be superstars. I think it happened with Wayne Rooney, who got into the Everton team when he was 16, Cesc Fabregas at Arsenal, Stevie Gerrard at Liverpool from a young age. And you're seeing it with Jude Bellingham, who was in Birmingham's team when he was 16. He's gone on, now he's 20 and he has the maturity of a 28-year-old. This fellow, I mean, the guys have told you all his qualities, his decision-making, his power. He's got that recklessness of youth about him as well. You know, he just doesn't care. He doesn't feel that emotion. He steps onto the Barcelona stage, picks passes, makes things happen, and he's exciting, isn't he?
Yeah. From a coaching perspective, Stevie, how do you handle this so that it doesn't become too much too soon?
It's really, in my opinion, to do with off the field. Because on the field, he takes care of business. It's the professional side of the game. He's 16. Yes, he's playing in a professional team, but I'm sure he's still doing all the things that 16-year-olds do as well. So if I'm the coach, I've got somebody looking after him 24/7. I'll certainly keeping an eye on him, because for me, it's about what he does to become a true professional now that will take him to the heady heights that his skill on the ball and on the field could take him to. But again, we should use Ansu Fati as a word of caution. We were saying the same things about Ansu Fati, and he gets his knee injury, and look at him, he's kind of struggling a little bit now. So, yeah, I think we should just have a little word of caution, but the talent, frightening.
You agree? A word of caution here?
Word of caution in terms of let's not get crazy. Let's not crown him Lionel Messi already. But let's be aware that there's a talent here that if not nurtured properly and taken care of and mature, this could be truly special, one of a kind sort of thing. And so it's a cautionary tale in saying, all right, let's learn from the fact that we have overused players in the past. Let's learn from the fact that we thought these guys were going to be amazing and we were depending too much on these young guys to be able to deliver right away. But if you're a manager, if you're Xavi and you're seeing that this guy is producing for you and you're seeing that he's making a difference and having an impact, it's tough.
Good stuff there from the guys, and obviously we're going to be seeing a lot more of the young player throughout the Champions League campaign and the La Liga campaign too. But we want to move on to talk more about Bayern Munich, and I'm actually going to take advantage of the fact that you are in Germany, in Munich right now, Rob, because I know you're obviously there with more of the Manchester United slant, definitely going there in PL Express today. But in the game at the weekend, which was a 2-2 draw with Bayer Leverkusen, who are top of the league on goal difference at the moment in the Bundesliga, Thomas Tuchel cut quite a frustrated figure after the game. We've seen that from him this season. He hasn't quite got what he wanted, even though he's got one of the best defenders right now in world football in Kim and Harry Kane coming in as well. He does want to make some reinforcements in the midfield. Was there any sense of any unrest there today from what you've seen?
No, I mean, no, not particularly. And I suppose it would help Thomas Tuchel that a lot of the questions today that was asked of him at the press conference were about Man United and the struggles that Man United have had. So it gave him a little bit of a chance to maybe deflect from some of the frustration from the weekend. It was interesting listening to Harry Kane, who was up in his press conference before Thomas Tuchel, who did say that there's big room for improvement this season, that it's going to take time for him, particularly as a new big player, to come and learn how his team wants to play and how his teammates play. Obviously, they've signed Kim as well at the back. So, it is a work in progress. It seems a little bit strange maybe to say that about a Bayern team who are so used to winning. But when you bring in these big players, Kane wasn't shy about saying it today that it is going to take time for them to learn how to gel. And these first couple of weeks of the season is about, in his words, getting through it. Getting through it the best you can, get some good results. Obviously, don't drop too many points. The idea is that by the time you get to sort of Christmas, the second half of the season, that is when you really hit your stride, that you're able to put big, long winning runs together. All the players are used to each other, the team is used to each other, and you're able to go on these big winning runs and win the trophies at the end of the season. The point that Harry Kane was trying to make is that there are no trophies handed out in September. The idea is that you get better and better, and that when it comes to sort of April and May, that's when you're really in your top form. So, definitely room for improvement. I think we spoke to some of the German reporters who were here today who said the same thing, that this isn't a team who is at the top of their game right now, but certainly there is enough signs there to show that there is enough talent in this Bayern team, to be second favourites in the Champions League. There's a reason why Bayern are second favourites to win the Champions League this season.
And in all fairness, Janusz, obviously they were perfect before this game against Leverkusen. They are still unbeaten. It did finish in a draw, as mentioned. But what's your assessment so far of what you've seen of Bayern this season, and how would you rate their chances in the Champions League this year?
Well, I mean, look, the pressure and the frustration of Thomas Tuchel comes from probably a couple of facts. One, that obviously, he hasn't made an impact in the dressing room yet, from what we hear, right? And it's not easy at Bayern, but obviously Thomas Tuchel has a little bit of a history. It's kind of my way or a highway. But the second piece of that is very important is that there was always that missing piece, and that missing piece was the central striker that Bayern Munich has had for decades. Some of the greatest ones, right after Lewandowski in particular left. So with Harry Kane coming in, fitting in seamlessly, scoring in this game early, the frustration also, is probably that right now Thomas Tuchel doesn't have an excuse for the most part, does he? So in a game like this, where I thought earlier, I mean, Bayern were the better team overall, I think, but especially early, you get Kane goal, which is very important, right? Because there's nothing you can say about that. You get Goretzka a goal, which is important, and that was late in the game, wasn't it? 80-some a minute as well. So you feel at home against a team like Bayer Leverkusen that everybody talks about. And one of the reasons is, of course, Xabi Alonso, who's a great manager, who's brought balance to that Leverkusen team, right? Leverkusen is, usually the Neverkusen, which I hate, but that's what it is. Up and down, could be great and could be absolutely terrible. But I think he understands that there's a push. There are others in the Bundesliga as well that will ask questions of Bayern Munich. But here's the frustration of leading twice late in the game. You get a Grimaldo wonderful free kick, and then you get a penalty in stoppage time as well. So I think he looks at it as an opportunity lost, in particular in Bundesliga, to make a statement against Bayer Leverkusen, against Xabi Alonso, who could be his replacement at one stage, has played obviously for Bayern Munich as well. So that's the early frustration. But I think he understands that he's got a very, very talented team, because even Kingsley Coman, I think, dropped out just before the game, if I remember correctly, as an injury. And he's an important part to anything they're going to do, especially in Europe. Obviously a great player. Serge Gnabry came in last moment, didn't look the part. But everywhere else, I see signs of Bayern Munich, who for me need to be considered as one of the favorites for the Champions League, aside from Ulreich in goal. And we'll see what kind of Manuel Neuer we get, because he's been away for such a long time. He's 36, he's pretty old. So who knows what we're going to get. That is an issue for me, because that was never a question. In fact, it was the captain, one of the most important parts of this Bayern Munich team in the last decade or more. So that to me is a massive question to answer.
And so, Janusz, just while we are here and before we move on to PL Express, what of Leverkusen? Because this was seen as the first proper test this season for them against Bayern. This is their start to the season under Xabi Alonso. 4 wins, 1 draw, obviously no losses. 21 goals scored, just the 5 conceded. The top of the league on goal difference. I would urge you all to stick on our YouTube channel and go and see some of the interviews with Xabi Alonso, with Granit Xhaka after the game, where they talk about how the team are playing. Granit Xhaka gives some great insight into how wonderful it is having Xabi Alonso, someone who understands his position as his manager as well, what he's learning from him so far. Are they the real deal for you, Janusz?
They are. They are different because of the balance that I've mentioned, and still quality. Obviously, Boniface up front without scoring was very, very good. A lot of chances. He's already been scoring at a good rate for a new player. The back with Ta and Tapsoba, I think that's always been there, and it's a good foundation in there. Florian Wirtz, again, one of those talents. I don't want to compare him to some of the players we've talked about, but I mean, he certainly is one of the most talented midfielders out there. So I think that this would just be a confirmation, right? If you're a manager and you go away to Bayern Munich and everybody is asking questions, are you going to be the usual Leverkusen who ultimately doesn't see it? This would be a confirmation to find that equalizer. However, I mean, it was a good penalty in the end, and get a point in Munich. I think very little needs to be said in that dressing room, other than, if I'm Xabi Alonso, say we can do this. This could be our year. And I think all players and all fans are totally behind Xabi Alonso in a way that perhaps they've never been behind any manager that I can think of.
Okay, it is time for PL Express, and I'm not going to beat around the bush here. I am going to tell you it's a heavy focus in today's edition on Manchester United, because it is a case of story, Man United. There is so much to talk about with what's going on at the club right now, particularly with another loss in the books, that 3-1 loss to Brighton at the weekend. That means it's 6 points from the first 5 games. That's 2 wins and 3 losses. You're seeing here, Brighton have now won 4 straight Premier League games against Manchester United by an aggregate scoreline of 10-2. Erik ten Hag put this result down to small margins. 10 goals conceded just so far. Anyway, now doesn't get any easier. As you can see, Rob Dawson is at the Allianz Arena for the Champions League game coming up against Bayern Munich. But let's focus on what is actually going wrong, in your opinion, Rob, this season for Manchester United.
I mean, where do you start? As much as I said some nice things about United earlier in the show, the fact is that it's a mess, to be honest. On the pitch, even the games that they've won, the performances haven't been good enough. You could make a case that they should have lost every single game that they played this season. They were well beaten by Brighton. On Saturday, it's now their worst start to a Premier League season since the Premier League started in 1992. Off the field, Ten Hag is dealing with a very, very long injury list, and not only a long injury list, key injuries to big players who are going to be missing for a while. There's a player versus coach rift rumbling on in the background between Ten Hag and Sancho that's not yet been resolved. Sancho has been removed from the first team. There's no timeline yet for him to come back. You've got Anthony, who's been given a leave of absence away from the club while he deals with obviously very serious allegations made against him by women in Brazil. There's the ownership situation at Man United is now approaching a year. Last November it would have been that the Glazers said that they were looking possibly to sell the club. We're no further forward with that. The Glazers aren't communicating with anyone. They're not telling anyone how far they're up to, whether they even plan to sell or not. Really, it's chaos. It says it right there at the bottom of the screen that it's chaos at Man United at the moment. And they desperately need a result somewhere, hopefully against Bayern for their sake, but really against Burnley in the Premier League on Saturday, just to kind of steady the ship. And I said the same thing before the Brighton game. They needed a result against Brighton and they didn't get it. The danger is now that things are going so poorly that they have a really poor result against Bayern, who will be heavy favourites to win that game. And then you go and play Burnley in the Premier League on Saturday night at Turf Moor. It's an incredibly awkward fixture and they get turned over again. And if it's chaos now, if we fast forward to possibly 2 defeats or 2 negative results, God only knows what kind of scrutiny will be on this team the following Monday, because this could get really, really messy very, very quickly for Man United if they don't do something very, very soon.
Just taking a look at more reaction over on X. Brighton have spent money. Brother, Brighton's annual wage bill is 48 million. Manchester United's annual wage bill is 200 million. Janusz, at what point is Erik ten Hag under really severe pressure?
Well, I think he is now. I mean, thanks, Rob, by the way, for leaving me something to say about all the issues.
There's always more. There's always more.
No, it's good. It's good. I think. Look, I mean, on one hand, it was almost too quick, right? Last season, it was like 3 steps forward for Manchester United with what he had to do, and he left himself very little room, very little margin to improve that team. So to defend him, as you've said, the ownership, it's a toxic environment. Ownership issue has to be resolved, right? I mean, it's not his fault that he's had to walk into the situation with Ronaldo. Well, I guess, he made that decision, which I think ultimately is still right. But, the situation with Greenwood happened before he got there, but he had to deal with that. Anthony, never mind on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. Jadon Sancho, from everything I understand, it's not an easy one. He's certainly not playing the way he's supposed to be playing. And I believe Ten Hag that he's not pulling his load the way he's supposed to. So you're dealing with that while you're trying to make progress with a team. So that's on the plus side. On the minus side, again, he will be under pressure because ultimately, I think fans and everybody will forgive him how Manchester United done it last year. And I think there are times where they looked all right, but I haven't seen the Erik ten Hag style of play, right? Whatever was promised, the pressing, the counter pressing, and making sure that they are the dominating team like they've been over the years, and we're used to it. And fans of Manchester United, Old Trafford has been a fortress. Well, look what happens. Brighton walks in and plays them off the park. Maybe not early in the first 15, 20 minutes, but a few adjustments, and these young players and nobodies to some degree. I'm sorry, because Brightons are not that, but it's unbelievable. That second goal, 30 passes, and Pascal Gross looks like one of the best midfielders in the world, right? Putting it away while helping to build that attack. So we haven't seen that. Away, same story. Last year was an issue. This year they go away against the top 6, and who they play? Arsenal and Spurs, right? Losses again. So I think he will be under pressure because that's the that's the job, I guess. I just feel that he wasn't helped. And one thing against him as well is I'm assuming he's making these decisions because some of the players he brings in, fair play. Every manager is going to bring somebody that they know. But, you know, I mean, the Malacias of the world, even Lisandro Martinez to some degree, I'm going to go crazy under the radar here. He ought to try him in a defensive midfield, maybe, just maybe, because when he goes there, he likes it. He doesn't come back. So, you know, Onana to some degree early. De Gea wasn't great in the beginning too, took him time. But, you know, Anthony, they're great players. Eredivisie. Okay, and nothing is Ajax. Ajax showed that in Europe, kind of, they always had that. But, you know, they're untested to say the least. You know, Premier League has a massive difference. And again, I'm going to come back to that. And I don't know if it's just Ten Hag's decision, but I have to assume that he plays a role. You talk about character. We always talk about Manchester United and character of players. On the market, again, Kane, Maddison, Ward-Prowse, and Declan Rice. I mean, if you're looking for character, know-how, winners already to some degree, players that know how to get things done, players that make a difference, English players that Manchester United has been known for years. You have 4 of these players on the market. None of them, not one. Never mind, you know, I mean, some have been talked about, and, you know, with Kane, we can be here, there, or anywhere, but I would find a way, right? Because I think, you know, Bayern Munich's play, is it today or tomorrow? Today is the game, right? Against United. I lost track who plays where, but we're going to find out soon enough how much they miss Harry, you know, how much more Kane could have given over somebody like Haaland. So I think, you know, he takes a lot of responsibility, and he knows it. He's a hard man. He comes across that way.
Well, let's get to his managerial style, Rob, because he's a no-nonsense manager. The players know they can't mess with him. We've seen countless examples, not countless, but we've seen a handful of examples already, including the Cristiano Ronaldo situation. But is there a question to be had as to whether this style suits the modern-day footballer?
Yes, definitely. And his approach to discipline within the squad is no nonsense. It's zero tolerance. And I can understand that, but it is a high risk, because if it works and you get the entire squad on your side, then you've got a group of players who are completely buying into what you want to do. And that history has shown serves managers very, very well. It's high risk in that if you keep alienating players, though, that will have the opposite effect, that these players have all got different relationships with different players in the dressing room, and dressing rooms tend to unravel very, very quickly. And so far, Ten Hag has got these, has appeared to get these big decisions right with Cristiano Ronaldo. He dropped Marcus Rashford. The players have all come out afterwards and said, yeah, like we want a manager who is not scared of making these big decisions. But the problem is that if you keep doing it and you keep alienating players, then there becomes a point when, you know, perhaps the problem isn't the players. Ten Hag needs the dressing room. You know, you asked Janusz before about is Ten Hag under pressure. I don't see that he is right now, because he's got the dressing room on side, but that is a very, very delicate balance to keep. Ultimately, he's asking these players to go out onto the pitch, on the training pitch and on the pitch on match days, and buy into what he's trying to do. And they'll only do that if they believe in him. And if he keeps having these very, very public rows, there will become a point, possibly, where the players decide that that's not the right approach, and they don't agree with it. There's already a question mark, I think, about how Ten Hag has handled this situation with Jadon Sancho. At the moment, the fans appear to have sided with Ten Hag over Sancho. But ultimately, this situation has come about because in a press conference after the Arsenal game, Ten Hag was asked where Sancho was, why he didn't travel. And instead of saying he just wasn't picked, he wasn't available, he had a niggle, we couldn't pick him, he said it's because his training performances weren't good enough. Now, once you make that public, Jadon Sancho has then decided to go public and say, well, that's not true. And that's where this whole row has erupted from. You know, Ten Hag, whether he thought that was the right way or not, Ten Hag could have said after that Arsenal game, he wasn't available, he wasn't picked, he had a niggle. And none of us would have known anything. Right. We would have been none the wiser. And Jadon Sancho would never have come out publicly. And this whole row that's erupted would never have happened. So, yeah, I mean, I think there has to be questions asked about how Ten Hag handles his squad. What he would say, and what he did say to us in a press conference on Friday, is that he's making his decisions not for him. He's making it for the good of the team and the squad. He doesn't believe there's a way of winning at Man United without making these big decisions. And if that means removing Jadon Sancho and other players from the squad, even if that means short-term pain and short-term results are not good enough, he thinks that there is enough long-term gain to justify those decisions. That is where he's coming from. And at the moment, Man United are backing him to make those choices. The problem is that eventually results will tell all, and Ten Hag will not be allowed to carry on as Man United manager, losing game after game after game. At some stage, he has to string a run of results together. Last season, after a poor start, he did that. And we're at that time again now. He needs to produce a run of results. And once he does that, the pressure will be off. If he can't do that, the pressure will grow and grow and grow. And there'll be more questions asked of his management style.
What do you think, Janusz?
Yeah, yeah, it's different now, that's for sure. But for as long as he stays consistent, and he has been consistent so far, I think. I mean, to a degree, I mean, he's no different than Sir Alex Ferguson was, right? I mean, deal with the problem. I think that we have to wait a little bit, because now the run of games is not so bad, is it? And I mean, yeah, I mean, nothing's easy, but you have Burnley, you have Palace, I think back to back, because one of them is a cup game, I think, and Sheffield United, and, in the Champions League gets easier. So I think if you get some of the leaders, looks like Varane, I don't know, Rob, you tell me, but I think I read that he's available, kind of. I don't know if for the Bayern Munich game, but he's very, very close. Hopefully Luke Shaw is not far away. That's such an important part of that team in terms of how well he's played and, how much of a leader he is. He also gives you options, as we all know, in a center of defense if need be, or on that left-hand side. So I'd be careful here, because I think Manchester United can quickly get back to make it respectable. But, we're at a point right now that no matter how hard he is, every loss brings on instability. And because the start has been so poor, perhaps unexpected after last season, right? We can say that. It's been so poor that, say, they go to Munich, they get hammered, all of a sudden that gets worse. We continue to pound Ten Hag and Manchester United, and everybody within is going to even speak louder about all the issues of the pitch with the ownership, and that just snowballs on you. And, football is a funny thing. People will come up with more stories, which are, I'm not saying they're not going to be true, but they're just going to put that much pressure on the whole of Manchester United. So I think a couple wins can change things, because that schedule gets a little bit more forgiving right now. But I just have a feeling that this Bayern Munich, Harry Kane situation, what if, regardless if you believe, if Daniel Levy was going to sell him or not, I think if he scores and, United run a winners easily, it's just going to be very, very uncomfortable, and it could turn sideways, if not backwards, even more.
All right, well, let's move on to talk about some of the teams in the Premier League. Obviously, there's been so much talk about Manchester United. We had to touch on it this week. Apart from Man City, which we all know, Rob, who's standing out to you as a real deal this season? Because we've seen a few teams maybe not throwing the hat into the ring of the title race right now, but certainly standing up to be counted. Spurs have had a brilliant start. Brighton as well, who've just beaten Manchester United as well. Arsenal showing that they still mean business this season. Liverpool showing they could be back. Who stood out to you apart from Man City?
Well, I think there was obviously questions asked about Arsenal's mentality when the pressure really got tough at the end of that title race at the end of last season. There was questions about how Arsenal handled that, and I thought that they showed that they'd taken a step forward in that regard by winning at Everton at the weekend. I thought that was, it's probably not a game that everyone was looking at thinking, it wasn't a statement win, but it really showed that they have taken a step forward in those really tight, difficult games. And Goodison Park, however bad Everton are and have started the season poorly, at Goodison Park, when the fans get up, is a really, really tough place to go. So I know Mikel Arteta will value that win very, very highly, especially after what happened at the end of last season. The other two teams ahead of the season that I thought would be worth watching out for were Chelsea and Spurs. Just because they don't have European football, they've got weeks to prepare for these Premier League games. We've seen when Leicester won it that it was a very, very telling tool that they had time on the training pitch when all the other clubs, all these other challenges didn't have it. Leicester took advantage of it and won the title. Obviously, Chelsea haven't started particularly well. There's obviously some teething problems there with Pochettino. But Spurs, the players seem to have bought in very, very quickly to what Postecoglou wants to do. And when you've got a team who have done that very quickly with a new manager, and the manager is going to have time on the training pitch and playing once every week, while all these other teams are playing across Europe in midweek, and Spurs have got the entire week to focus on one Premier League game, that can be a very, very dangerous mix. And I'm certainly not saying that Spurs look right now like genuine title challengers, but if they are still in and about in the mix come the second half of the season, they would be very, very dangerous simply because they don't have the distraction of European football. Obviously, you've said there, City are favourites and favourites for a reason. But Arsenal and Spurs, to me, look like they could possibly get there or thereabouts.
Janusz?
Well, what I know is, what we thought we knew. Manchester City, I think Arsenal stands out because, was wondering, they need to keep up with Manchester City, and they have done that. We'll see what happens without Martinelli, because that's a big blow. Because by the looks of it, I mean, they have players to fill in, but not in such way as Martinelli. There's nobody there that can play that role in the way that he plays. And he's going to be out, never mind Europe, but North London Derby's coming up this weekend, and I don't see a chance of him playing in that game. He's not going to be risked for that. So that's an obvious one. We can talk about Spurs because, they're going to lose under Ange. But what a beautiful scenario, right? With Ange Postecoglou not only coming back late in this game, but Richarlison, after that wonderful speech he had ahead of the game, the scenario was written, right? For Richarlison to score a beautiful goal and to have an assist as well. And, that just... takes so much pressure away from everybody, including Richarlison. So, because, when things like that happen, we kind of start feeling sorry for the player. But answering like that immediately puts a smile on everybody's face, regardless if you're a fan of Richarlison or Spurs as well. But, having said all that, these are maybe some of the obvious ones. But the biggest story is Brighton. It's not even close what they did it, to Manchester United. It's quite unbelievable. We knew that they're going to keep a certain level, but they look better this season than they looked last season. And this is after losing Caicedo and McAllister in that midfield. Pascal Gross, maybe the most underrated player in football in general, never mind Premier League. On that goal that he scored 30 passes, and although he didn't touch the ball very often, but kept the rhythm, changing the point of attack from right to left, showing for the ball, wanting the ball, keeping that play alone alive. And then, he's been doing this almost every game, right? We're just afraid to give him enough credit because there's always an Erling Haaland hat trick or somebody else scores an unbelievable goal, and we're like, yeah, Pascal Gross, right? But he does that week in and week out. Tariq Lamptey. Come on. I forgot that he's there to a degree because Pervis Estupiñán is playing out of his mind, and in comes Lamptey, 2 goals, assists, just incredible. So again, the tweak, the way they play, how much risk they take. It seems like De Zerbi and Brighton are getting better and better. And I didn't think they could build on what they did last season. Here we are. Who'd they get hammered by? Aside of that one game, they're in the 5th spot right now. Who'd they lose to? I don't know, West Ham, or I can't remember. Help me out, guys. That one game where for whatever reason they didn't play. They are the story of last weekend, and nobody coming even close.
All right. Well, listen, we've got to go because we know the Champions League is back. We want to watch it. You guys want to watch it. Rob's got to get ready for that big game tomorrow between Bayern and Manchester United as well. But thanks for being with us on the latest edition of ESPN FC Live. We'll see you again very soon.